Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of Sea of Solutions. We will begin shortly, so we hope you found your seats and that you've had really nice coffee this morning. Thank you.
Sawadika Bangkok! Welcome to the second day of Sea of Solutions 2024. It's great to be here and to see all of you. I trust you all had a very productive day one of the conference, and today we'll be beginning with day two. And my name is Sharanjit Leyl. It's a real honor for me to be your moderator for this morning's discussions. Now, of course, we know we are all gathered here with a continued focus on collaborative solutions to end plastic pollution. And today's discussions will, of course, explore one of the most crucial aspects of ending plastic pollution, and that is, of course, financing. Now, addressing plastic pollution requires not just innovative ideas, many of which we heard yesterday, but also crucial financial resources to drive and scale these solutions. Now, before we dive into today's plenary session, let's take a moment to reflect on the key moments of day one, involving many of you, I'm sure. We've put together a short video to give you a quick recap of some of the conversations we heard yesterday. So cast your eyes on the screen.
To all of you, it's great that you can join us at this UN Conference Center.
Here for Sea of Solutions, a platform to drive solutions to end plastic pollution. And why is this important? Because plastic pollutions are choking our rivers, polluting our oceans, and harming nature.
Plastics are not the problem, we are. We need it to end now, and hopefully an internationally binding instrument will be a step forward to make that happen.
But the answer is everybody need to take responsible, because everybody play one part of the value chain.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that recap. It is truly so inspiring to see the commitment from all of you and all the different stakeholders, the partners who work together to tackle this huge challenge that we have. Well, to give us an overview of today's agenda, I would like to invite Mr. Mushtaq Memon. He's the Regional Coordinator for Chemicals and Pollution Action Subprogram here at the UN Environment Programme. Please give him a big round of applause.
Good morning, and I hope you had a very nice evening after a good reception and drinks, and so everybody is re-energized. So good morning, everyone, all the distinguished guests and my colleagues. It's my great pleasure to welcome you at day two of Sea of Solutions. We are deeply grateful to all the speakers who contributed yesterday. And speakers is not only the speakers you see here, all of you are the speakers, no? You must have spoke with someone. So all of you have contributed. So big thanks to all of you, and we continue to look for that even today. And also, we extend our big thanks to the UN Conference Center, who did a marvelous job. As you can see, the beautiful hall and the equipment and everything. And then, of course, the biggest thanks go to Government of Sweden for their very generous funding for this project and program, and we look forward for that partnership with the Government of Sweden also. So reflecting on day one, we witnessed a powerful demonstration of our collective commitment to tackling plastic pollution. We delivered into transformative approaches across the plastic value chain, from adopting circular business models to applying life cycle approaches for sustainability. The sessions underscored the urgent need for innovative solutions and cross-sectoral collaboration. Today, we continue our journey towards actionable solutions, focusing on several key areas. We will exercise how to redirect financial resources to support circular plastic solutions, examine successful partnerships and strategies for mobilizing resources, and dive into crucial topics such as extended producer responsibility, inclusive access to financial resources, and innovative strategies at the city level to prevent plastic leakages and plastic pollution. The objective of today is to build on the discussions from yesterday, so we continue, and drive forward actionable outcomes. We aim to deepen our understanding of financial mechanisms, enhance our collaborative networks, and gain insights into practical solutions for scaling up our effort against plastic pollution. I encourage everyone to actively engage today as well in all the sessions, share your insights, and leverage the networking opportunities available to you. Your contributions are vital to crafting effective strategies and forging partnerships that can bring about meaningful solutions and a real change. As we proceed with today's agenda, let us remember that our success hinges on our ability to work together. Innovative and commitments for long-term solutions, discussions, and today will have a major impact on our fight against plastic pollution. So before I close, again, just a quick suggestion that tomorrow's very exciting but insightful field visits are on the agenda, and you will get also alert from the organizers that as we receive quite many applications and we have to be selective for each field visit. So you will get, so please tomorrow, as you will be the selected one, so don't miss it, because sometimes we select and then we don't get all and we have a half empty bus. So that is really sometimes quite a shame for us. So at that note, let's deep dive today. And as I mentioned, we all are speakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Mushtaq. And as he mentioned, don't miss the field trips. I wish I could be there. It's a chance to see the circular economy at work. Well, now it's time to kick off our first plenary session for the day, and this is all about redirecting financing for plastic pollution solutions. And as we know, and as we just heard from Mushtaq, the plastic pollution crisis continues to persist. And despite growing awareness, yes, we are all aware, we see the plastics on the beaches and around the region, the crisis continues to persist, and there is still a gap in investments to transition towards a circular economy for plastics. So today's session will really delve into the critical role that financing plays in enabling this transition. We'll explore the current funding landscape, the challenges in mobilizing resources, and the opportunities for redirecting financial flows towards solutions that can stop plastic pollution. So I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for this session, Regula Schegg, the founding partner and chief financial and operating officer at Circulate Capital. And Regula, of course, brings invaluable insights into how the financial sector can drive very impactful change in addressing plastic pollution. The floor is yours, Regula.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I was just reflecting, I was a small child growing up in a little village in Switzerland. And I grew up in meeting with the Boys and Girl Scouts every Saturday to clean the plastic which we gathered from the community. And it never appeared to me in the little world I grew up that the problem with that, with our action, would not have been resolved. And many years forward, I'm very happy to be here to share with you some of our learnings, but also discuss what we need to do to really resolve this global significant, huge problem we have at hand. So again, thanks for having me, and I look forward to sharing some of our experiences with you. What we heard yesterday is that financing is a critical component to tackling plastic waste. And we know also that there is a significant gap in financing towards the solutions. Reducing mismanaged plastic waste by 90% from 2019 level requires $17 trillion in public and private funding between 2025 and 2040. Of the 17 trillion, the private sector needs to cover about 15 trillion, while the public sector is supposed to cover 1.5 trillion. We heard that number yesterday, that more than 120 financial institutions and associated organizations signed a special paper towards the treaty, and these investment managers alone manage about the same amount of capital, more than 15 trillion in assets under management. A set of 15 global rules across the whole plastic life cycle must accompany the investments to reduce the mismanaged plastic waste. And these global rules and the implementation are critical to achieve those targets. Some of these global rules are along reducing virgin plastic production, eliminate avoidable plastic and problematic plastic in the system, expand safe circularity. That's what we're here for, to address what does it take to bring the plastic back into the circular economy rather than seeing it as waste. Also control disposable plastic which cannot be recycled, and then really prevent microplastics across the entire supply chain. The cost of tackling plastic pollution is higher in emerging markets than it is in developed markets. And that puts a strain on these markets. And we heard yesterday from one of the gentlemen in the room who asked the question, so what are we going to do in countries where we are behind in building the infrastructure? Who is going to finance this? Well, yes, if we talk about bridging the gap of funding, then we need to have the respective facilities globally as part of a successful treaty to fund these developments and action items. So the implementation of a global set of policies that shall reduce the plastic pollution is at a higher impact on the GDP of emerging markets. And as you see here on the chart, the overall impact on GDP in accordance of OECD data is expected to be 0.4%. But for sub-Saharan Africa, it's a 1.5%, a region which was already challenged by its poverty and its overall economic development. For India, it's just about 0.4, the average, but for the rest of Asia, particularly for Southeast Asia, it's 1%. And so the question comes again, who is funding that, as it has an impact on the GDP? Further looking at the amount of development finance, we can say that we have made progress. When you look at, we have indeed over the last years, based on information available, that there has been an increased funding of official development finance. So that's a great starting point, it's good progress. There has also been increased ODA financing for specific plastic-related projects. But I think it's just a starting point. When we look at the 190 billion investments in plastic circularity globally between 2018 and 2023, then we see that the majority has been invested in the northern globe, in the developed markets, and only a fraction has gone into the emerging markets. In Asia, it has only been 18 billion funding. And when you look at sub-Saharan Africa or generally the African continent, then it's a very minor amount. There where the problem, in Asia and in Africa, where the problem is biggest. So it just actually poses the question, so how are we making sure that the capital available is flowing to the markets where there is the biggest need? This information has been gathered by our sister entity, the Circulate Initiative, as they have developed a plastic circularity investment tracker, which is publicly available and continuously improves and gathers data towards where the investments have been made. So if you want to have more information, please go on that tracker and you will find some revealing information about where exactly investments have been flowing. Private capital can play a critical role in addressing the issues, and private capital has started to play a critical role. But what the issue is right now is that institutional investors have still been at the sidelines in investing in solutions towards plastic pollution prevention. It is a high-risk investment. It is often in countries where the regulatory framework is unclear. And as we all know, the investors like to understand the risks they're investing in. Another issue we see as well in particularly the emerging markets is that 90% of plastic waste management relies on the informal sector. These informal communities or the sector who gathers all that material may not have the right legal structure for investors to invest in. So we cannot really invest straight into these organizations. That's also the reason why a lot of these organizations are funded by NGOs through philanthropic capital. And let me be clear, philanthropic capital is very critical in helping and build the ecosystem, but there is just not enough philanthropic capital in the market to really build the necessary infrastructure and to build a systemic approach and a value chain to tackle the issue. So because of that inherited risks driven by one-off and non-harmonized frameworks, by lack of investment opportunities or perceived lack of investment opportunities, by investments which may not be available or not be adequate for institutional investors to invest, there is just not yet capital moving into the market. We started with that understanding that someone needs to play a catalytic role in bringing capital to the market, in showcasing to institutional investors that this is actually an interesting space to invest in. You can make money while having a tremendous environmental and social impact. So Circular Capital started with that mandate and understanding of being a catalytic force in 2019 and raised capital initially with corporate investors. Corporate investors like Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Dow Chemical, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, some of the largest global FMCGs, who all have a plastic footprint with a clear understanding that they want to be part of the solution. They were angel investors and catalytic in that sense to help us start looking for opportunities in South and Southeast Asia. And we found them. They are out there. There are plenty of mainly family businesses run in the first or second generation, but also new startups in the industry who have solutions to the problem. They have solutions either in the innovation side by developing new products which can replace plastics. We heard yesterday about seaweed, which has been used for the replacement of plastic sachets. But there are also plenty of businesses out there, family-run, which have been recycling plastics, recycling PET bottles, polyolefins, and other materials. So the targets are out there. We just have to find them. We have to fund them because historically they have not had access to the financial industry. By being able to showcase and start investing the funds we had, we were able to attract more institutional capital. And as you see now, we have funds from some of the largest DFIs, from Proparco, the French Development Agency, IFC, IADB. We also have gotten a guarantee from DFC, the United States Development Finance Corporation, which helps particularly when you look at blended finance mechanisms to de-risk the portfolio at hand. And since then, we've gotten a step further. We started attracting private investors, family offices, corporations, businesses, who all started understanding that this is an investable space. So there is a light at the end of the horizon. It's doable. It's work, but it works well. We can do it, and we can showcase that actually this is not a charitable organization. This is investment-like capital. What is most critical when investing in the supply chain is that it is very systemic and holistic. We cannot just invest in recycling or recycling of PET. No, we need to really invest in the entire supply chain. And we look at it from three ways. So we have the collection and sorting of the material. That's the most difficult one. How do we, in such a big area in Asia, where 90% is managed by informal sector. How do we start pinning down where we can invest in proper collection and segregation of the plastic at hand? Because that's ultimately the starting point. Without that material at hand, we cannot recycle. Then we invest in businesses which recycle the material. As I mentioned, it can be PET, polyolefin, it can be low-density material. We invest across the industry, we invest across the material. And I think that's very critical, because while PET is rather simple to or easy to mechanically recycle, the more difficult one are the multi-layered material, the single-use plastic, the pouches. These are areas where we really need to invest significantly to provide solutions, particularly for material which cannot be phased out as part of the plastic treaty. For us, critical is also to really provide more than capital to these businesses. We provide technical assistance, we provide them with partnership with our large corporations. They have product development collaborations with some of our investors. We provide them with offtake. So it is not just about providing funding. We have to look at it very holistically. What do these companies need to be able to step up to the next level and play with the multinational corporations and be able to be part of their supply chain? So since we started, we raised $250 million. We invested more than $100 million in 17 companies. We have a way to go, but it is a starting point. But what is also clear, looking at what we've been able to accomplish in the last 5 years, it's just a drop on a hot stone, and it's much more needed. So then the question comes, so if one company can accomplish this, what can we all together accomplish? And here, the plastic treaty or harmonized regulatory frameworks are absolutely fundamental and critical to attract institutional capital. Because as you also heard yesterday, they need to understand the playing field they're working in. They need to understand the risks associated to these investments. So having a level playing field will enable more capital to come in. I'll give you a very interesting example. India has been really groundbreaking in implementing policies to tackle plastic waste. They have implemented an EPR system. They in the near future will likely implement a minimum amount of recycled plastic in their packaging. They have allowed plastic to be used in food contact applications. And just by implementing a clear framework of policies, there has been a tremendous interest in capital, private capital going into that market. Because suddenly you know what you're investing in, you know what you're getting, and capital goes in. So we have been investing in a company in India called Dalmia. We were the first equity investor as an external investor. And then shortly after, they were able to attract a 30 million loan facility from the USDFC. That's unprecedented. That's enormous amount of capital, being able to grow them exponentially. So the collaboration between private capital and public capital is very critical in making this path forward. Now, financial mechanisms towards the legal binding treaty, the plastic treaty, is instrumental. We need to have clear rules in how these financial mechanisms and instruments are be placed. I think what is critical is that the instruments will not only fund the investments itself, the activities, the initiatives, but they should also fund incremental costs associated to the implementation of the policies needed for the plastic treaties in the local context. Often what we see, it is easy to fund CapEx, but OpEx has to be funded as well. So currently there are different facilities discussed. We're talking about blended finance mechanisms where the private and public sector will collaborate and provide funding. There can be a dedicated multilateral fund. It could be within the World Bank system. It could be outside of the World Bank. It could also be part of the Global Environmental Facility currently available. But what is critical is really that we find ways of funding this. It can be outcome-based bonds which we can issue. There are many ways of actually attracting capital from the private sector, de-risked by the public sector. Extended producer responsibility is also a great way to fund some of these initiatives. And we've seen that in some of the markets where they have been implemented. As part of the global treaty, there's also discussion about global plastic pollution fee. That is quite controversial. It does recommend for the virgin plastic producers to provide a fee per tonnage of material produced. I heard, wasn't there, but at the last INC that this is likely, or this is quite controversial, as I mentioned, and may not be the path forward, or it will come in a different structure. And before I close, an example I wanted to share as well in the Indonesian context. Treaty Oasis was a small female-led business in Indonesia. It was our first investment actually. It was a loan which we provided, guaranteed by the USDFC. With that investment, the company was able to move to a new location and grow their business and be ready to partner up with a large international player. They partnered up with Alba. With Alba coming on board and creating a joint venture, they were then able to attract capital and a loan facility from ADB. This is an example of how things can actually work. So it is something where we all need to come together. There are solutions out there. There is definitely private capital out there. And I think in combination, we can really see the way towards funding the plastic treaty, towards no more plastic pollution leakage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Regula. Truly insightful, and so good to hear that there are indeed solutions out there. You have proven there are. But as you mentioned right at the start, it is a staggering number that's required, $17 trillion worth of investments into ending plastic pollution. So how can all of the different stakeholders that we have here in the room today and the stakeholders out there come together to mobilize those resources? 17 trillion is just one of those resources. There are many, many more resources required to really accelerate that shift towards the circular economy.
Well, I mean, resources is not just finance, right? So, and I try to put it in the larger context. So the private sector, as I mentioned, has an increased interest in investing in the space, as long as the private sector understands the risk inherited. So here again, the plastic treaty can help in harmonizing the policies and moving away from a patchwork situation we have right now. Because plastic doesn't stop at the borders of a country. And if we invest, or if a private investor invests in a company, you know, we don't necessarily just invest in that company playing a local role. They may really export their materials or become a global player. And so the more harmonization we have at hand, the better. The governments can play a role. I mean, we have seen green bonds issued in markets like Indonesia, the Sukuk bond, where the government can issue such bonds. That's another way, right? Although we also acknowledge that the governments, in particular in emerging markets, has limited resources, as they have also other agenda items to address. I truly believe that as we move forward, that there will be more and more financial products available to the investor themselves. Right now, the majority is really in private equity, right? And private equity is not, you know, available to everyone. But I'll trust that over the course of the next years, that there will be more products available for institutional, but also private investors to invest. Banks have a role to play. I mean, banks can issue green bonds as well, right? Corporations can issue green bonds towards such solutions. And we have seen that there are plenty of case studies out there where banks, corporations, multilateral organizations can issue facilities or bonds to fund some of these investment opportunities.
Yeah, and this opportunities is the key word, because ultimately, not only are you ending this pervasive problem of plastic pollution, you actually make some money in the end. So that's a good thing when you think about investments. So tell us a little bit about how or what could potentially hinder this much needed transition towards something like what you've been talking about, the circular economy.
I think really that we do not find harmonized solutions can really hinder that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mentioned India. India allows now plastic to be applied for food grade or food contact, right? Meaning you have a PET bottle and you recycle the PET bottle and it goes back into another PET bottle. In some of the countries we're operating in, this is not yet permitted, and that obviously prevents plastic from being upcycled. Because ultimately what we want is that the plastic in the system is not downcycled, but it's upcycled. It's really used, it's reused for its biggest or best potential. And so again, the EPR systems and the local context, the frameworks and the policies which enable investors to move in are really critical. But I also think the consumer behavior is critical, right? What could hinder a move towards a circular economy is the fact that the consumer does not use his or her voice to actually, demand a change in the way we consume, in the way we package materials. We have so many youth, young people here, and ultimately they are the future. Choose what you buy. I mean, does an apple have to be packaged up? No, it doesn't. I mean, think about how much you shop in and how it is packaged. So the consumer has a role to play, and I think we've seen an increased consumption during COVID and post-COVID in single-use plastic, etc. Let's reflect on how we consume. So the companies have a key role to play as well. I mean, I am fully aware that a lot of companies, they have their own production facilities, and obviously there's capex in these facilities. But I think there is also a need to innovation, right? And a part of the 15 golden global rules to get to stemming the plastic pollution as part of the treaty is really also to phase out material which is really not needed. So innovation within the corporation is really critical to get away from the conventional way of packaging to more more biodegradable or different kind of packaging. So I really believe everyone has a key role to play in this topic, and we just cannot give up. We
Absolutely.
just have to continue. And what I also see is we need to also build the ecosystem around, right? Finance is one part of it, but the whole ecosystem around plastic pollution prevention also means involvement of the communities, particularly in emerging markets where a lot of the informal sector lives from plastic collection, to enable them and ensure that whatever solution we implement ensures that they're not negatively impacted.
We're running out of time, but this is so fascinating and it's so interesting to hear the various stakeholders and the role everyone plays, including consumers, the youth. Education and awareness really is key. At this point, I'd like to turn to the audience and see if there's any questions at all for Regula while we have her here in the hot seat. Yes, a question there. And if you could keep it brief, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina from Yunus Environment Hub. Thank you very much for the presentation and for highlighting that 90% of the recycled materials are collected by the informal sector, which are often supported by NGOs and social businesses. And all of these groups are often not able to access finance. And I'll be actually speaking at a knowledge session later on why are the reasons why small businesses and social businesses don't have access to finance. My question to you is, out of those 16 investments that you have made so far, how many were to social businesses?
So, question is how you define social businesses. But so we have made 3 investments on the collection side of materials, right? One is in Indonesia as an example, which focuses on best-in-class collection center setups, not only in Java, but beyond, because often in the remoter islands where there is not the necessary infrastructure, they collect the material. they work with aggregators and the informal sector. We have made investments in recycling companies, but a lot of these companies also have their own collection arms. So indirectly, we have connected throughout the entire value chain in all the way down to the collection of the material. Now, when we talk about the informal sector, what we make sure as part of a framework we have developed, and it is publicly available, it's called the Sustainable Recycling and Supply Chain Framework. That framework enables and makes sure that throughout the collection businesses, particularly also where we touch upon the informal sector, that there is no human rights violation, they're fair and basic, the minimum wages paid, and that they are given the necessary protection equipment so that they're an integral part of the system. And so the companies we invest in, they have to comply with this sustainable sourcing framework we enabled and implemented to ensure that while we may not invest directly in a, let's say, in a waste bank in Indonesia, right? But by working with them through our businesses we invested in, that all of these issues we see at hand are addressed appropriately.
Thank you. Wonderful question. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, Regula, but it was wonderful having you speak, and we've learned so much in this short time. We'll continue this conversation, of course, as we go on with our sessions, but please do give Regula a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to move on to the next session because we have some experts, as you can see, as well as Regula, to address this huge challenge in tackling plastic pollution. But before we get started from this next session, we'd love to hear from all of you. So if you do get a chance, we have a QR code that's about to be flashed onto the screen. If you can scan that QR code, we'll get started, and we want to hear from all of you and what you think. So get a chance to scan the QR code before we begin the next session. There it is. It is the Mentimeter QR code, where we want to hear from all of you, essentially, before we begin. And it'll give us a context in what we're going to be talking about in the next part of our discussion. So once you've had a chance to do that, I'll tell you a little bit about the next session, because it really aims to bring together all the stakeholders. We keep hearing that, of course, stakeholders are key. They are from different industries, sectors. They need to come together to collaborate. And that is what this next session is all about. It is all about tackling plastic pollution through collaboration. So once you've had a chance to scan that QR code, let me begin by asking you our first question, which is, what sector do you represent? Now you'll see all of those answers there. Please just answer truthfully which sector you represent, whether you're government, private sector, NGOs, civil society, academic research institution, international development, or you fit in other. So let's have a look at our audience today. Wonderful. We're hearing quite a lot of you from NGOs and civil society, followed by international development organizations. And we have private sector as well represented today. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think overwhelmingly we have NGOs, civil society, private sector, international development organizations as the key partners who have joined us here today, but we also have governments, academic and research institutions, of course, and other. So thank you for that. Next question. What are your areas of involvement in tackling plastic pollution? So please respond to this. There's a number of areas that you could fit into. Please pick one. So your areas of involvement in tackling plastic pollution. Lots of research data analysis, technical assistance for funding, community engagement and advocacy, training and education. And of course, we have directly involved in policy development and implementation, which seems to be the leader. So great to know that we have so many change makers in the room who are directly involved in policies that can really make a difference to end plastic pollution. So that's wonderful to get a sense of what each of you are doing. Our next question is, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge in tackling plastic pollution? Let's go to the next question. I guess you are still responding, but here we are. The next question. In your opinion, the biggest challenge, what is it? You can pick only one. We know there are a multitude of challenges, but you may only pick one. So limited policy enforcement or regulations seem to be winning here. But we also have insufficient public awareness and education, lack of funding and resources are some of the other concerns. But yes, over 40 of you are saying it's limited policy enforcement or regulation. So we do need more regulations. Great that so many of you are involved in policy. So let's see if we can get it moving. And finally, let's go to our last question, which is, how do you feel about the current solutions to tackle plastic pollution? Are we on the right track, full steam ahead? Good start, but in need of a turbo boost? Trying to plug a leaky boat with a sponge? Or I'm waiting for a hero, maybe a miracle. So let's see what each of you think about the current solutions that exist out there. Okay, about well over 40, well now 50 of you think it's a good start, but we need a turbo boost, which is why we are all here today talking about how we can come up with solutions. So thank you all for taking part in all of that. We loved hearing from all of you, and really crucial as we start our next session, because we have some amazing experts. I'm going to invite them here onto the stage. They'll be joining me here amongst the panel. Let's introduce our expert panel who will be offering some of these solutions in leveraging partnerships and resources. So let me introduce first of all Kate Phelps, who's the environment engineer from World Bank, if you want to join us here on stage. Followed by Ryo Kawamura, the head of the Environment Unit and Regional Knowledge Center for Marine Plastic Debris from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Thank you. And we have Alvaro Zurita, the head of project at GIZ, Deutsche Gesellschaft für international Zusammenarbeit. I hope I did not mangle that. Christina Jäger, the co-founder and managing director from UNOS Environmental Hub. Of course, you've just heard from her asking a fantastic question. And finally, we have Patinya Silsupadol, the head of sustainability from a major packaging company and also from the Thailand Institute of Packaging and Recycling Management. So, a big round of applause to our wonderful panel. Thank you all. I'm going to start with just a very generic question. You heard me, of course, introduce all of you, but I'd like you to introduce yourselves in your own words and tell us what your organizations do and how do they weigh in on this crucial debate. So let's start with you, Alvaro. Yes, go ahead. Are we hearing Alvaro?
Okay.
Good morning. We hear you now.
Good morning. Yes. Good morning. Thank you so much. Alvaro Zurita, GIZ, German Development Corporation. Won't talk so much about me. It's boring. It's about the institution I represent. But okay, a few words. Yeah, I've been working in environmental topics for many years in private company, it's consulting, but most part of my professional experience has been in German Development Corporation, Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit. And this is maybe starting there. You know, this is a long word, no? And the last word, Zusammenarbeit, the Z stands for Zusammenarbeit. This in German, these are two words actually. Zusammen means together, Arbeit, work together. So it's basically in our DNA to cooperate and to set up partnerships. So this is what we do. Some of you probably have worked with GIZ. We support, basically our main work is supporting countries, partner governments in developing their public policies. It's a support. The countries develop their public policy, but we support them with knowledge, expertise, knowledge platforms, stakeholder processes, etc.
Great, wonderful to hear what GIZ does and the proper pronunciation. Hey, let's move on to you. We know, of course, what the World Bank does, but specifically the projects that you're working on.
Sure, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Philp. I'm an environmental engineer based in Singapore with the World Bank. And I've been working on our regional marine plastics program now since 2019, so 5 years. Over that time, we've built up quite a substantial program across the region, both at the regional level with ASEAN and also at the national level. We've been really fortunate to receive funding from the ProBlue Multi-Donor Trust Fund, which is housed at the World Bank, as well as the Korean Green Growth Trust Fund and the Danish Embassy in Jakarta. So on addressing marine plastics, we do this across 3 different categories of activities. So firstly, helping to develop knowledge through analytical work. So currently we have several regional studies ongoing, and these include topics like extended producer responsibility, phasing out single-use plastics, the regional waste trade. And the results of that analytical work help to inform policy development and also to inform investment projects. So we have also been providing policy support to governments. So at the national level, roadmaps and action plans on plastic sustainability in Malaysia, marine plastics in Thailand, and single-use plastics in the Philippines. And also at the regional level, we've supported ASEAN to develop their regional action plan for combating marine debris, which was endorsed in 2021. And then finally, we also, of course, support investment projects. So that's at the national level in Cambodia. We have the Solid Waste Management and Plastic Improvement Project and other projects under preparation in other countries. And then at the regional level, we have the Southeast Asia Regional Program for Combating Marine Plastics, and that's the project that I lead. And we on the World Bank side, and we are implementing 10 of the 14 actions in the regional action plan under that project. We heard earlier Regula was talking about the importance of harmonization, and so that's a key part of this project in implementing these actions. We're trying to move towards policy harmonization across the region. And note that I say harmonization and not standardization, right? We know that there are different country contexts across the region, but we're trying to get everyone sort of at least facing the same way, moving in the same direction. And we know that this kind of policy harmonization can help to then support, for example, private sector investment, as Regula was outlining. So finally, I just want to mention another study that we have ongoing that's looking at the plastic waste trade in the region. So we know that since China banned the import of plastic waste, a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia have been looking at either banning it or restricting it. But that has a couple of issues. Firstly, we have a risk of, we see a risk of a situation of the port of least resistance. So we have 1 or 2 countries in the region where all of the poor quality plastic waste will end up. But we're also missing out on potentially an opportunity, right? Good quality imported plastic waste can support the recycling industry in countries. So we have a study sort of essentially looking at possible areas of collaboration and cooperation on plastic waste trade in the region to try to facilitate a legal and sustainable trade in plastic waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, great to hear that very long list of things and projects that the World Bank is taking a crucial role in trying to end plastic pollution, and particularly in this region, which is what this plenary is all about, deal with it in Southeast Asia. Kawamura-san, perhaps you can give us a sense of what area ERIA does, your organization, and your role.
Yeah, thank you very much for a kind introduction. I'm Leyl Kamura, Director for Regional Center for Marine Plastic Debris of ERIA, Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. ERIA is an international research institute located in Jakarta, Indonesia, and it established this regional center in 2019, so relatively newcomer to the plastic pollution issues in the ASEAN region. However, it was recognized as a key knowledge initiative in the regional ASEAN's regional action plan for combating marine debris, which was established in 2021. So, that is because our website has provided various kinds of policy information. It includes extended social responsibility for ASEAN +3 countries. So not only India, but also many ASEAN member states like Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam has introduced or decided to introduce the extended social responsibility following their local context. You can find some analysis and comparison of these ASEAN's EPRs from our website. In addition to the policy information, we have also provided some practical tools or guidelines for combating plastic pollution. For example, we have publicized a toolkit to reduce the consumption of the single-use plastics by nudging people. For example, charging plastic bags or plastic straws, or changing the default setting in the cafeteria. You have to say, I need a straw, otherwise you cannot get the straw. But such kind of the default setting will affect people's behavior, and people simply give up free plastic straws or free plastic bags. It's very interesting result was observed in our pilot project conducted in ASEAN member states. Such kind of the result was compiled in the toolkit to implement for other ASEAN member states to implement a similar kind of the experiment or a project to reduce single-use plastics. We have also publicized assessment report and technical guidelines to reduce plastic leakages from recycling industry. Unfortunately, plastic recycling industry in ASEAN member states has one of the major sources of the plastic leakage, plastic pollution in ASEAN region. So we have established with AIT the assessment, providing assessment and provide solution by technical guidelines. We have publicized such a report in July 2024. This is a very updated and very new report. So you can find such kind of report and toolkit from ARIA's website. You can find, please Google search by RKCMPD. RKCMPD, you can find such kind of the technical and practical information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kawamura-san. Great to know that ARIA plays a real educational role almost with these toolkits to enable policymakers and consumers like ourselves to make real differences. Next up, we have Christina, of course, from the Yunus Environmental Hub, named after the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who I had the great delight of interviewing many years ago. But tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yunus Environment Hub is an accelerator for social business entrepreneurs that are tackling the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. It's co-founded by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, and we follow his groundbreaking concept of social business to advance our vision of creating a world of 3 zeros. That is zero wealth concentration, zero unemployment, and zero net carbon emissions. We have implemented 32 programs across 40 countries in both the Northern and Southern Hemisphere, where we have incubated and accelerated 250 social business entrepreneurs and trained more than 2,500 stakeholders. We also work with the public and the private sector in providing advisory services on a just transition for a circular economy. Recently, we published a report that we did on behalf of GIZ for the 3A Proma program here in the ASEAN region, looking at how a just transition in the waste management sector and circular economy for ASEAN could look like. And what we did is we did a thorough interview process of interviewing and speaking to experts of all the different stakeholder groups, from government agencies, private sector, the informal sector, NGOs, youth groups, waste management companies, etc. And also looking at best practices and recommendations from other sectors, such as the energy transition. And I'll be happy to share some insights from those findings today. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. We look forward to hearing them. And finally, Kun Patinya, obviously you represent the private sector, but you also are part of a federation that is a big membership is the private sector, but what it's doing with packaging and recycling specifically.
Thank you, Sharanjit. Sawadee krap. Patinya from Thailand. I'm local here. A little bit about myself. I started my career 30 years ago in commercial. So I've been around selling plastic, buying plastics, and also doing a lot of activities to promote commercially the use of plastics, right? And only in the last 4 years that I joined the company, and also the first time that I entered into sustainability area, and now key focus is circularity of the packaging. So with that role at my company is actually giving me an opportunity to work across the industry. And now I'm being a part of an institute called the Thailand Institute of Packaging Management and Recycling for Sustainable Environment. And today I'm here to share my journey in the last 4 years and how I see collaboration is a key to the success of ending plastic waste.
We look forward to hearing more about your journey. So thank you, all of you, for giving us a very quick introduction of how your organizations really are playing a crucial part in this huge debate of ending plastic pollution. My follow-up question is just, we keep hearing about the need for more awareness. The reason why we're even holding an event like this today is because, yes, the problem is challenging. So my next question to all of you is just how difficult and challenging is the problem in this particular region where we sit in Southeast Asia, in the ASEAN region, and are there effective solutions that can really be put in place quickly enough so that they can actually tackle the problems? So if anybody wants to pick up on this next, love to hear. Okay, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I think we all know, Southeast Asia is kind of, has been branded as a hotspot for plastic pollution, and we've heard a lot about that here this week. And there are challenges, right? We've had rapid urbanization, explosion in use of plastic products and packaging, inadequate waste management systems, and we also have the geography, right? So, a lot of coastlines, the nature of the region, so many islands, we have big rivers that transport plastics, and so it's moving, it has a transboundary nature, right, moving across countries. So there are a lot of challenges, but it's not an insurmountable problem. Already we're seeing so much action across the region at the national level and at the regional level, like I said. We do need more innovative solutions to really fully solve the problem, but there are also kind of more straightforward solutions already available, right? That we can be focusing on. So things like, and we've heard about this, improving the design to improve recycling, reuse. I mean, even just water bottles, containers, bags to reuse instead of using plastic. And then finally, strengthening the waste management systems. So these are not things that we need to wait for the research and the data to tell us. These are things that we know can work. Yeah, I'm very hopeful. We're seeing a lot of action. Yeah.
Alvaro.
Yeah, thanks. Let me add on this. Well, the biggest challenge is, no, part of the challenge is that we in East and Southeast Asia, we have the biggest share of the plastic pollution going to the oceans. About studies said around 60%. Many countries in the region are apparently under the top 10, so it's a huge contributor. It's a bit different to the climate change because maybe it's generated here, but it's a more complex approach. Not that the country that produces, that leaks more plastics is necessarily the most responsible. It's not. You cannot do it as similar to the climate change, where the countries that emit more have the full responsibility of their emissions. What is here maybe also different, or one of the challenges, not only in the region, is basically the total global south, is that we have here the informal sector. The informal sector is a big difference to the rich, wealthy Western European countries. There's a totally different reality. So our public policies should consider the informal sector in all what is being developed now, in the plastics treaty, etc. And lack of municipal solid waste management structures, governance structures, all the public policies. This is a big, big challenge.
Big challenge, as you say, it's 60% from this region alone in terms of plastic leakage into oceans. Is that specifically that number, which is staggering and really very worrying, as we can hear. Obviously, there are toolkits out there to solve the problem, but we in this region are amongst the worst. Is there anybody else who would like to pick up on that particular question? Yeah? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to note that, as Kate mentioned, that ASEAN member states has already shown their ambitions and their willingness to tackle against plastic pollution. Already, national action plan were revealed, and regional initiatives, regional declaration, regional action plan was also established in the ASEAN region. So the problem is not, the challenge is not about, say, ambitiousness or willingness to tackle the plastic pollution. The problem is resources and infrastructures and other capacities to tackle the plastic pollution. So it is huge challenges, as mentioned in the previous keynote speech, that there is huge financial gaps. However, many ASEAN member states has already taken step forward to getting the private investment, public investment. So I hope that the upcoming global plastic treaty will keep momentum of these ASEAN member states. Then it's not so impossible to overcome such a challenges. This is what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kavamuras. I believe Kun Patinya and Christina want to add to that debate.
Sure. Plastic pollution is a symptom of a much bigger issue that we have, which is our broken economic system that involves much bigger crises than just plastic pollution, right? That is connected to wealth concentration, the climate crisis, pandemics, et cetera, And we will only be able to address plastic pollution if we address it from a holistic point of view of changing the system. And this will only be able to be done by going new roads. If we continue going the old roads, it will lead us to the same results.
And as someone who's taken the new roads, Kun Patinya, your push towards moving away from plastic.
Yes, of course. But I like to take this question from another angle, because I believe that we all know the challenges and they are huge. I'm taking from another angle that only when we have the challenges, that is when we're becoming our best. And especially for the private sector, when you have those pressure, and especially when you have regulations that are clearly defining your roles, that will help us to be in our best mode. So I say I like the challenges, and that's why those challenges push us together, and now we are collaborating in order to achieve the same objectives.
Wonderful. Well, let's move on. Thank you all for responding to that. Give us a context of the scale of the problem, the challenges involved. I'll move on to the next one, which is really, you've already mentioned some of the projects and collaborations that you have undertaken to try to resolve the issues that exist out there. Can you give us a sense of, give us examples of successful collaborative efforts that have really managed to tackle the problem on its head? Alvaro, I think you're looking at me. You have some answers.
I think we all have.
Yes,
so,
we do.
We just go here.
Perfect.
Follow the order. As I said, we are of course implementing a lot of projects worldwide. I didn't mention them in my initial words, but we're working in the Caribbean, in Mexico, in South America, in different parts of the world with circular economy projects and focusing more and more on marine litter and plastic pollution. So we have here in the region, or in Asia at least, in India, 2 projects running. And then we started here 5 years ago. It already ended the Rethinking Plastics project funded by the EU, which was a regional project with 7 partner countries in the region. There's with ASEAN, this Ria Promar project. We have the so-called CAPSI project, which is on single-use plastic and extended producer responsibility. And here in Thailand, we are working with the Mari Design project, which is a bilateral project, but we are working in cooperation with WWF and UNEP COPSI, and there we jump into the cooperation approach. Just want to mention that all these projects, they have different approaches, different regions, some have a more social approach on gender equality, gender, human rights, etc. Others focus more on technical aspects, but what they all have in common is single-use plastics prevention, eco-design, and EPR. This is along these topics GIZ is working worldwide. And just mentioning, you're asking for good experiences with partnerships there. There are different levels of partnerships. We have some partnerships at global level, working together with other implementing agencies, multilateral, bilateral, international development cooperation agencies. And then we have in the project level or regional or national level, the cooperation we are promoting among stakeholders, the private sector, academia. Just some examples. We have, for instance, GIZ holds the secretariat of the Prevent Waste Alliance, which is an alliance that basically it started in Germany, but it rapidly grew, and now it's European, and actually more than European, it's a worldwide waste alliance, which it's a partnership between private sector, academia, think tanks, government, and this has shown to be very successful. In the framework of that Prevent Waste Alliance, the so-called EPR toolbox was developed, and which is a good start for starting implementing EPR. I'm mentioning all this. If you can just Google it, Prevent Waste Alliance or Prevent EPR toolbox, and you will find the toolbox in different languages. Further, we can mention also effort among international institutions, the so-called GAP for EPR, Global Action Partnership for EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, which is an effort between GIZ, UNEP, WWF, in the framework of the Prevent Waste Alliance, and also with collaboration with OECD. And it's a platform, a knowledge platform, a pool of experts. Countries have the possibilities to access to experts through this platform. 2 more.
Yes, quite a lot.
Further, GIZ this is something that GIZ Germany is developing now, but it has potential for partnership. The so-called INC toolkit. We are working on an INC toolkit, which, of course, the idea was to have some more progress now, but since the INC progress everything is open still. In the Plastics Treaty, it's a bit delayed, this toolkit, but this toolkit will be a toolkit for implementing the treaty later. And there we will need collaboration, of course, in partnerships with other institutions. It's not something that Germany or GIZ can promote alone, so there will be potential for collaboration too. Last but not least, the project level, country level, as I mentioned, we are in Thailand. We are working on the MARI design project, which is a project funded by the German government, German Environmental Ministry. And we are implementing it in collaboration, again, partnership with WWF and UNEP COPSI, which is an excellent experience of partnership. And the idea behind is that we have been working in parallel in all these topics. All donors, all the implementing agencies are working on EPR, toolbox, roadmaps, analysis, studies. And the idea was to work together. And so we optimize resources. And yeah, this is the approach. And in the country, in Thailand, the approach of partnership is working together with all stakeholders. So with Kun Patinya, with TIPIMSE, even if it's not our formal partner, GSF works, our formal collaborations with the government. Pollution Control Department, Mondre is our formal partner here, but we established these networks, and because we are convinced that the only way to develop public policy is in partnership and having all stakeholders on board.
Wonderful, truly gratifying to hear how many successful collaborative projects AIZ is involved in around the world. Kate, we heard a little bit from you at the start about the various projects the World Bank is involved in, but give us examples of real successful collaborations that you've seen.
Yeah, sure. I think I sort of alluded to this already, but diving in a bit more detail. So we supported the development of the Regional Action Plan for Combating Marine Debris for ASEAN, and that was financed by ProBlue. And that was an extremely collaborative process, right? Because of course it has to be. So not only do you have representatives from the 10 ASEAN member states, but also all the other stakeholders across the region, right? So the private sector, DPs, academia, NGOs, and other civil society. So the process of developing that action plan, it involved several workshops, including through COVID. So we ended up doing kind of half of them online. And that's resulted in this very clearly framed regional action plan. And it's actually amazing. It was endorsed in 2021. We're just now seeing the discussions on the global treaty, right? So 4 years later. But we've done a mapping exercise to look at how it aligns. And actually, the regional action plan and the draft global treaty are very well aligned. They cover all of the kind of same topics. And so obviously that process of collaboration and of getting all the input from those different stakeholders back in, starting in 2019, was successful in kind of coming up with these same ideas that we're now seeing at the global level. And so from that, we're now financing ASEAN to implement the plan, as I mentioned, under the CMAP project. So that's the next step for that one. I also wanted to mention just on EPR, so we've prepared an implementation readiness assessment tool. So we see across the region, a lot of countries are moving on EPR, and some countries like Vietnam have already put it in the regulations. But we also see a lot of challenges that countries are experiencing. And so when it comes to kind of designing that EPR framework, it's really important to understand kind of the implementation readiness for EPR. So across different areas like policy, infrastructure, awareness. And so we hope that tool can be really useful to countries across the region in designing, developing, and refining their EPR systems.
Wonderful, great to hear. And Kawamura-san, likewise, you mentioned some of the projects that Area had worked on. Perhaps just one example of a successful collaborative.
Well, in addition to the project I had already introduced in the first of my intervention, I'd like to introduce the private sector platform initiatives. It is a setup. It is an online platform which collects innovative private companies which are operating in the ASEAN Plus 3 member states. And it also invites government officials to come together to discuss about plastic, how to combat plastic pollution in each ASEAN member state. We have already held such kind of event, such kind of workshop in Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, or most of the ASEAN member states, we have just remained, Myanmar is just remained, but with other member states, we have held such kind of event. And I realized that such kind of, innovative companies and government are siloed or isolated each other when making action towards plastic pollution. They don't each other in many cases. So coming together to discuss, to share the challenges and share the proposal to solve the solutions all together and with coming together is a good starting point and a good breaking through for both sides, public sector and private sector, to consider a next step to the combating plastic pollutions. I had already attended Singapore and Brunei. Brunei is a very typical example. Brunei has no big plastic recycling industry. However, it needs to establish such kind of capacity because since the China ban, they have no option to manage their plastic waste other than landfilling. That's why after the China ban, some of the innovative companies have come out, but they don't know how to collect the recyclable plastic waste from whom, or such kind of challenges they face. And some companies have started reuse businesses, but they face with the competition between the neighboring countries' big stores, such kind of things. So such kind of challenges are shared, and they share the notions, current status, and they would like to step forward. In order to consider the next step, such kind of a partnership to consider. The partnership is very important. That is what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Kawamura-san. You're absolutely right. I mean, why we are here today, it is all about collaboration. Sharing is the crucial word you used, and eradicating all kinds of silos. Now, Christina, it's really interesting because we're hearing all these collaborative efforts from the rest. And, we've heard from all the stakeholders, many of you here, from the public sector, from the private sector. Christina, maybe you can give us an example of some of the voices that we don't hear from as much, perhaps from the informal sector. What do we really need in this equation to include so we can come up with a solution?
Yeah, thank you very much. You already mentioned a few examples. Like just transition is key because the effects of plastic pollution are not evenly distributed. They have a greater effect on vulnerable communities. And these can be informal workers, these can be indigenous communities, it can be poor communities, but not only them. But I will first talk about them briefly and the importance of them. We heard previously that these are very important players in the recycling market because they are collecting the majority of the materials. And the transition to a circular economy is not just about the end-of-life management. And that's why I want to really stress that just transition is not only about looking at the informal sector, but at the whole life cycle at plastics, where also marginalized groups play a role. Marginalized groups being people that are socially and culturally excluded because of their gender, their age, their sexual orientation, their race, which is regardless of their economic status. So it all starts by understanding those differences and by challenging our own biases. And then in the next steps, opening high-level policy forums for these voices, because they're underrepresented. And we heard some of the examples of successful partnerships, such as Prevent Waste Alliance, where we have a working group on social inclusion, or also MPAP, that the National Plastic Action Partnership that was talked about yesterday, where in Vietnam there is a task force on gender and social inclusion, where we're also part of. So these are some examples of how you can facilitate social dialogue, and we need more of these, and we need them in every space, basically. These voices need to have a seat at the table on any of these discussions. And what's also important is not only giving them a seat at the table, but actually listening to them. The feedback, what we are hearing from those that are being given a seat at the table is that they often feel they're being invited so that there is a checkbox that is being ticked, so that they have been included, but they don't feel that decision makers are actually listening to them, that they're not being taken serious. So this is what needs to change.
Absolutely, and it sounds like it's a real challenge, as you say. You know, we're talking about collaborative efforts, but we do need to represent and hear those voices of those vulnerable communities that you mentioned. Kun Patinya, obviously you represent the private sector, and you know, no equation or any discussion about collaboration can exclude the private sector. I think what Regula mentioned earlier, it's about 15 out of that $17 trillion in investments that's required from your sector. Tell us more about some of your collaborative efforts.
Thank you. It's probably the most complex part. Private sector is not only one entity, as you said. It consists of different parties from the supply chains. Just for an example, at the Federation of Thai Industry, we already have 46 industrial groups. So private sector is not one, actually. So just want to focus, coming back on the Institute, our main focus was from the beginning, packaging is raw material. So you can see we have been doing that for 17 years in Thailand without any success, I would say. Because of the fragmentation of projects, everyone is doing everything in their own ways, and they are doing a pocket of excellences here and there without consolidating in the private sector to have power enough to show example and demonstrate to the government. This is the way to go. So I like the comment from Christina on the looking from the holistic view and looking at ecosystem instead of doing good thing here and there. So at the Federation of Thai Industry and TIPMSA, then we are the front line for the industry in order to providing recommendation to our government agency as well. So the single success that I think that we achieved so far is that we are driving and we are advocating ourselves for the EPR law in Thailand for packaging material. It has been about 2 years now since the beginning of the journey. Has been really challenging only to get the private companies to sit together and then to get the same opinions on our positions, right? And after we have good positions, then more people come in and said, no, we cannot do that again. So that is the successful is coming from understanding each other, listening to each other. When you have this kind of argument, you take one step back, looking at the overall picture again, and see if you want to move forward and if you want to move on, what is the best way to move on? Probably not the best practices or not the best methodology on. You probably have to take time with it because you need to understand everyone in order to get a strong collaborations. And as Alvaro mentioned, finally we successfully working together to set up the temporary EPR board. And based on that, it's the first time that in that board consists of more private companies than government officers. So the first step of success, and I believe that within the next 2 or 3 years, we demonstrate as well how the private sector can work and lead in collection and recycling for packaging material in Thailand.
Thank you, Kun Patinya, and really good to hear what's being done in the private sector. But again, as you say, the reality is the private sector is not all one or very fragmented. And of course, you represent so many different companies out there, global, multinational companies. You can really start to take this issue and start to make a change. Yours included, as well as Unilever and some others. Now, I'm going to go and ask another question, which is, it's great, we've heard some successful collaborations from all of you, but let's hear about your wish list. what would you like to do next in terms of really being able to tackle this problem? What is on your list of partners, strategies? What will you do next to really start to shift the debate when it comes to ending plastic pollution that you haven't quite achieved yet, where there has been challenges in place? What's that particular goal that you're trying to achieve? So, Kate, you're looking at me very thoughtfully. Perhaps you've got one.
Getting there. No, I think for us, a big part is we've done all this work at the regional level and supported ASEAN to do this work at the regional level. And the next step is making sure that that's then carried down to the national level and implemented at the national level. And I think, for the bank, this comes through in our investment projects at the national level, but also in the support that we provide to the ASEAN member states as part of our regional work. And I think this is really important to think about in the context of the global treaty as well, right? And of course, we don't know what's going to be included in there yet, but anything that is in there, we have to think about how will that then translate down to the national level and even beyond that, right, to municipal level, local level, because it's only there that the difference is actually achieved. And I think also just in relation to the global treaty, I think that there's a lot of interest. Obviously, it's a hot topic, a lot of interest from many different development partners on the INC process and the outcomes. And so I think that's somewhere we can really try to collaborate better and work together better on that, on supporting the countries in implementing the treaty.
Christina, did you have a comment?
Yes, absolutely. We are looking for partners to implement the recommendations for a just transition. And these are literally partners from across all stakeholder groups. And we are looking for partners who are really interested in seizing the opportunity of not seeing just transition as an obligation, but really as an opportunity for a holistic transition that looks at social, environmental, and economic impact. And even though finance is often seen as a burden for addressing it, we are saying money is there. It just needs to be channeled in the right directions and needs the openness of creating new instruments and formats and the right partnerships. So we are looking for those partners who are willing to do that and that, are really open in doing things differently and that sort of take the greater good before the personal, and not just personal level, but on the professional capacities, ambitions, which starts, for example, on the governmental level. It's not just amongst stakeholder groups, but also within different stakeholder groups, because it requires, for example, collaboration on government level across all ministries or several ministries that need to be taken into account. So that's what we are aiming for.
Thank you. Alvaro, very briefly, we're running out of time here.
Sure.
So any more
we
on that
have
wish list?
been, I think we all agree on this holistic approach. So we cannot just talk about single-use plastics and a single-use plastics prevention project. So we have to look along the whole plastic value chain in our support and our projects. And not only that, we have to look at even in a circular economy context. No? And this is where, I think where we need to get better, at least I speaking on behalf of International Development Corporation, I don't think we're bad, we're good, but we can get better, optimizing our resources and collaborating with all the international donors and agencies to, work together on the whole value chain.
That's the ultimate goal of this panel. It's working together, isn't it? It's not just yourselves on the stage, but everyone here and beyond watching. I'm going to move on because we do have, in the interest of time, we're running out of it. I would like to perhaps put each of you in the hot seat a little bit longer to ask you to take a pledge what is the one pledge that you can make today, personally and within your organization, to try to end plastic pollution? And it's really crucial to hear from each of them, because then all of you can think about what pledges you can make personally and within your organizations to truly end this pervasive problem of plastic pollution. So, Alvaro, let's start with you again, but very quickly and briefly, and I'll open it to the floor.
Building on my last intervention, I can commit here and now to continue and improve this collaboration in the projects with our public and private and partners in civil society and academia, and with international development cooperation agencies, because we're already doing. I can commit to get better.
Wonderful. Okay.
Very similar line as that. I mean, I can commit that we'll continue to work collaboratively and get better in that space to strengthen knowledge, support policy, and provide investments to address plastic pollution.
In addition to the improvement of collaboration, I'd like to pledge we'd like to transform the accumulated knowledge in a number of knowledge initiatives in ASEAN region into the concrete and practical action. The key is such kind of the toolkit and the guidelines which are introduced at the first intervention. But in addition to that, there is many knowledge initiatives, knowledge center exist and operating in the ASEAN regions. Area is willing to collaborate more with such kind of regional knowledge center outside of the area and within ASEAN regions and outside the ASEAN regions to improve and propose more actions, concrete actions to combat plastic pollution. Thank you.
Dina.
Continue to challenge biases and challenging the status quo and not accepting the answer, it's not possible because it has never been done before.
Just do it better every day. And we set up a national pro, and everyone is invited to join the announcement on the 2nd of October during the Sustainability Expo. So that's my pledge.
Wonderful. Put that in your calendar, 2nd of October, to join in for more collaboration. Now, you've heard the pledges from each of our wonderful experts on stage, but now let's hear from you. If anyone has questions from the audience, or if we are getting questions online for all the people who are watching, we'd love to hear some of those questions. So, yes, gentleman just over there. Thank you. And if you could identify yourself as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Punyathan Tiksaman. I'm the plastics campaign researcher from the Environmental Justice Foundation based here in Thailand. And thank you for a very wonderful and informative session. Just want to ask the panel about possibility also of financing the upstream approaches to address plastic pollution. We've heard a lot about financing, recycling, waste management, which are important. But we have, for example, our organization has a project on refill system in Thailand. And we are seeing this as a pilot, a proof of concept for government to take it on and then reduce plastic packaging from the source. But then we don't see a lot of discussion about financing reuse system, refill system, whether in the INC or whether in these kind of sessions as well. So would like to hear how we can make reuse, refill, and reduction itself financially viable. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody like to pick up on that? Kate.
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Very, very good question. So under the CMAP project, we are supporting ASEAN to set up a regional platform for innovation and investments. And under that platform, there will be what we call a financing marketplace. So we're trying to bring innovators in to promote the innovations and bring investors in, and also customers, so supporting innovators to identify who are going to be the end users, the purchasers of their products. And so within this marketplace, that gives an opportunity to try to find investment. And there will also be a technical assistance program that innovators can apply for to help to kind of upskill to be able to get those investments. So keep an eye out for that. It should launch at the start of next year.
Christina, you've got a response.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that the reskilling aspect is also very important for investments into upstream innovations. What we're hearing from the informal sector voices is that they see upstream innovations both as a risk and an opportunity for them. And we need to sort of, again, size the opportunity part by helping them through reskilling programs in order to access those opportunities.
Thank you. Anyone else want to respond?
Yeah, just the last part from commercial point of view. I mean, if we want to scaling up this kind of project, we need to take the whole system and take manufacturers and producers and everyone in the supply chain and have a full solution for them in order to move. So if you focus on single brand or single product, it's going to be much more difficult.
Well, thank you. I hope that adequately answers your question. Thank you for that question. I'm going to move on to the questions online now, and I believe Leah from UNEP has been monitoring some of these questions. Leah, do you have any questions for us? Okay, so the viewers online are very much engaged, but don't have too many questions for us. So I think on that note, unless there are any other burning questions from within the room, let's give you one more, the lady in the green top. Thank you, and please identify yourself as well. One final question.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Mayang Azurin from Gaia Asia Pacific, and we've been monitoring financing flows from different organizations, especially international financial institutions. And we've been seeing reports that mostly 82%, one of the World Bank reports mentioned, 82% of financing goes to downstream recycling and recovery. Now, questionable projects under recycling goes to plastic recycling that is not complemented by strong safeguards. One of the projects that we've been monitoring is Indorama Ventures project. It has, in ADB safeguards document, it has 400 chemicals in its operations, 120 of it is found to be hazardous. There are labor reports, occupational hazards like weak lungs, hearing impairments, accidents, fires, and leaks. A year ago, there was a leak contaminating 3 provinces. Now, the question is, we all want financing, right? This is the theme for the past 2 days, but we want them in the right solutions. And what we've been seeing is that most of this recycling, the right solutions, refill, reuse, that was mentioned earlier, only receives 3% of the total finance. None of the financing that we've been monitoring includes just transition plans. No integration of waste speakers. All of these plastic recycling disintegrates or displaces them in these business models. We want to ensure that these, as we talk about just transition, going to end plastic pollution, we're also ending the problems that emanates from the plastics product. So I'm wondering if the safeguards policies, even not only from the World Bank, but also from private sources of investments. We've heard a lot, available finance needed, would be complemented by strong safeguard, would go to less polluting solutions.
That's a great statement. I'm sorry I had to cut you off. We are running out of time. Would anybody like to respond to that, please? Let's go ahead.
I mean, I can respond to the aspect of why there's no commitments for finance into just transition yet. I think one major barrier towards that is that we don't have standardized metrics on how to measure the impact of just transition measures. And this is actually something that I also would like to pledge, that we want to work on having these metrics that will help both governments and also the private sector in order to quantify and qualify as well what their investments into just transition measures would be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk to how we considered these issues when we prepared the CMAP project, because certainly, many of the issues that you've described were front of mind, right? We don't want to be solving one problem and creating more problems. And so under that project, as I mentioned, we will be supporting innovators. And so there was consideration around what are the categories of innovations that we will be supporting. And we very much focus on the upstream areas for that. But also we apply the World Bank Environmental and Social Framework to that project preparation. And so as part of that, there is an exclusion list that's developed that excludes certain categories that are at a higher risk of creating some of these problems that you're talking about. So that's certainly been considered, and it is quite front of mind as we go on to implement the project.
Thank you for that. And I think with that note, we can give our expert panels a big round of applause. That has truly been such an insightful session, and so good to hear all of those recommendations, policy advice, and that wish list that is still to be fulfilled. We are not done with all of you yet. Before your coffee break, I'm going to do the Mentimeter once more, just to see how the needle has shifted with this conversation. So let's check in with Mentimeter once again. There's a question which is all about how do you feel after this session? So let's have a look at the potential answers from that. If you can just scan the QR code once again. We'd love to get a gauge on how you're feeling. Great, lots of thumbs up coming in. I'm assuming you're all feeling fairly positive, but let's take a look at the actual answers. There we go. Okay, lots of people feeling very positive after the session. This is skipped ahead to the second question. We want to create, we've gone back to the first question, sorry, there we go. Lovely, one person is inspired and ready to take action. There we go, encouraged, but still have questions. Great, okay, we're getting all the responses now. How do you feel after the session? I'm glad to see that so many of you have been inspired by it, but of course many of you still have questions. Some of you are still overwhelmed by the complexity, and of course there are many of us who are unsure, but of course willing to learn more, which is why we are all here today. We're learning from the experts. But brilliant, 30 of you inspired and ready to take action. Now let's move on to the second question now, which is where we want to create a word cloud. So please list out 3 words that really summarize your key takeaways from this session. So what are those words? Let's have a look. 3 words that you can come up with in terms of your takeaways from this session. Hope is the largest one. Collaboration, yes, that's what we've been talking about. 3 words. I'm seeing hope, collaboration. Let's see if we can find a third, which is a word that you all think effectively summarizes our session. Action. Okay, action, collaboration, and hope. I think that is a lovely way to end our session. Once again, a big round of applause to our expert panel and to all of you with your great questions and being such an attentive audience. Now, I believe it is a coffee break right now, but when you come back a little bit later, we will continue talking about this key issue of financing the end of plastic solutions, plastic pollution. Thank you all, and enjoy your coffee.
Please take note of the venue for the succeeding knowledge sessions. So right after the coffee break, we'll have knowledge session 3, understanding EPR, which will be here in conference room 3. Knowledge session 4 on an inclusive finance, inclusive access to finance resources is happening in conference room 4, right outside of conference room 3. See you.